Mega Man. At its core, it's a series of platformers known for the traditionalization of jumping and shooting. The concept itself sounds amazing, but it's not a series I grew up with in the most standard of ways. While most of everyone grew up with the original and X series, I personally grew up more with the alleged spin-off generation such as the Zero, ZX, and Battle Network series. That's not to say I have no knowledge of the latter two, I just didn't play them by my own hands until much later. For a while, I did try to play most of the original Mega Man, but the gameplay didn't stick with me nearly as much as the others did. On the bright side, the X series was a decent shade of glow in comparison. Mega Man X was a series that rejuvenated the original Mega Man formula, and took it to a greater light than before. It took the basic jumping and shooting mechanic and made it more complex with advanced controls and an overall grittier tone. The series features X, a hunter Reploid who's out to protect humanity from the threat of rogue mavericks. Accompanied by the ever-so-lovely Zero, they set on to defeat the forces of the evil Sigma virus. As the series goes on, we get introduced to more allies we quickly forget about, and more villains that hardly matter in the long run, because we all know Buzz Lightyear is gonna be the mastermind of every game anyway. As it stands, this series was long overdue for me to give a look at. My first introduction to Mega Man X is through a Newgrounds RPG game where X fights Magma Dragoon. Other than that, I played the original trilogy when I was an angsty teen, but I hardly recall much of it. That is, until now, that I decided to play the whole series and see if I can cover the games under the perspective of a non-nostalgic player. I'm sure it's gonna be quite a shift of moods, given how this series has been known for its exceptionally praiseworthy highs, and lows beaten down so often that I kinda feel sorry for them.
Does that mean you're gonna be nice with me?
Oh, no worries, old chap. It's hard to trash a game that I haven't played.
Finally, Wait, what?
So how about we get to the covering? Since there's a lot of games to handle, we're gonna split the review into two parts and cover as much as we can for now. Let's begin with the first 4 games in the series, starting with the grandfather himself. The original Mega Man X, one of the titans of the second generation 2D platformers, alongside Super Mario World and Sonic the Hedgehog. Everyone loves this game for its immaculate presentation of 16-bit graphic advancement and mechanically freshening the Mega Man formula again after it's been long burnt out. It's got pretty much the package fans wanted to see in a grander scale Mega Man game, and was considered one of the greatest games ever made when it came out. So with all these showering praises and steps taken forward, does the game hold up just as well today? Yeah, it does. This is definitely one of those games that got its technical details just right that it feels great to play now. Even if I'm not crazy for it, partially due to growing up with more complex titles, I applaud this game for keeping its classic vibe with few shortcomings in return. The playstyle is what you can expect from Mega Man, but it furthers with more mechanics like charge shots, wall climbing, dashing, and various options of recovery. This makes X such an ultimatum badass, especially when compared to his old school brother. Add part upgrades and flexible new weapons, and X will surely win the heart of new and old fans of Mega Man alike. That is until Zero robs the spotlight completely, but we're not quite there yet. Adding on to that, we get some pretty well built stage that hasn't lost the wacky mechanics we familiarized with the later Mega Man games. Hell, the game arguably does it better if anything. Riding Armadillo's minecart and piloting the Armor and Chameleon stage are a welcome variety, and the way the game does its water stage with its open-ended depth makes us wish every water stage could be like this. The presentation is phenomenal, 16-bit art at its finest and cyber metal soundtrack that all helps encapsulate the gritty tone the game set as the foundation for the coming series. It's certainly not unlike what I'm accustomed to seeing with the Zero and ZX series, but it culminates in the simple straightforwardness of the style in comparison. I do enjoy the politics of Mega Man Zero and the rise and fall of Hope in the ZX series, but sometimes I'm okay with just good robots fighting for robot justice against Maverickism? I don't know. Speaking of Mavericks, someone thought it's a genius idea to take the elements of a robot master and fuse it with animals to give them a stronger identity. And you know what? It works pretty damn well. We get a range of easy pickings like Chill Penguin, Flame Mammoth, and Spark Mandrill, and some etiquette aces like Storm Eagle, Boomer Quanger, and Launch Octopus. Granted, I have my fair share of beef with Sting Chameleon and Armored Armadillo, but low as they go, they still got pretty standout redeemable qualities like great stage and weapons, which even then spreads to just about the rest of the roster. Most of them weren't super hard to beat, even Buster only, but the game picks up on the challenge with the Sigma fight being pretty hectic and really tests your skills in reading your enemy's movements and calling the right shots. The weapon roster is another noteworthy value of this game. In most Mega Man games, there's usually gonna be a couple, if not most weapons in the roster that have no real utility purpose other than boss weakness. Here though, every weapon you get has some form of utility, whether it be puzzle solving or wiping out enemies easier, and being able to charge them for additional purposes, you know you're in for a treat. When we get to the nitty gritty of the narrative, I do appreciate that it does take itself decently seriously with really high stakes for fighting and deaths of major characters. And to be fair, it is the first game in the series, so stuff like this can be understandably heavy on its own and makes for great driving force for a game that doesn't need to be too complex to be captivating. And that pretty much sums the whole thing up. Mega Man X is the step up fans always wanted to see in Mega Man, and it delivers in just about every aspect, followed by next to no shortcomings. It's about as solid a generation kickstart as you can get, and I'm no stranger to declaring it as a timeless classic. So the original X kicks ass, big surprise. I may not sound very attached to it, but I do value what the series brought Mega Man into. I definitely prefer the gameplay style of future generation Mega Mans over the restrictive originals, and without the foundation of this game, I wouldn't have gotten the Zero and ZX series I adored so much. So it applies a wonderful influence to some future Mega Man games. But what about its own sequels? Do the X successors hold a matchstick to the power of a perfect classic? Well, old-time fans already know the answer to that, but let's unbox these boys anyway. Here it is, the first of many sequels to the X saga. Mega Man X2 follows what X1 does best, and takes a slightly advanced design direction in hopes of standing out ahead of its powerful brother. Given its development timeframe though, it's inevitable that it has a few rushed elements. Still, there are parts it nailed pretty well, but compared to X1, the blunders are pretty visible. It's been a while since X's first victory. Made a name for himself for killing Sigma, he now has to thwart an organization seeking to hunt him down. These fellas are aptly named the X Hunters. And conveniently, it turns out they're holding parts of Zero hostage, and depending on how X absolves the crisis, he may or may not be able to save Zero from his previous demise. Spoilers, even when he didn't, he still did. The gameplay is pretty faithful to the original. X still controls well, and he even got to keep some upgrades from the previous games and obtain new ones that amp up the versatility of his movement. I'm never letting go of that mid-air dash, I'll tell ya. I'm certainly glad it didn't regress any mechanics just to make the game more challenging, unlike some sequels. Most of the game is pretty similar to the first game at its core, but as long as it maintains the inventive stage designs, it still does a great job at keeping its seal of quality on point. The rising lava and flame stack stage adds nice tension, and the fact that it's not instant kill helps take away unneeded stress. Crystal Snail stage is damn gorgeous, and the sliding block puzzles are pretty entertaining. Overdrive Ostrich gives a kick-ass start to the trend of chaser bike levels. The other stages follow through with these pumping stage designs. The weapons are also pretty good, with most of them maintaining the utility convenience the first game had. Even with all that settled though, the game is rather stacked with mixed bags, particularly when it comes to the soundtrack. When the music is good, it's really damn good. The ones from the stages I mentioned kicks absolute butt with how either rambunctious or elegant they can get. But then there are some less than desirable mentions like Wheel Gator's theme sounding like incoherent screeching, and most of the boss themes sounding as bland as dry chicken. You know, if dry chicken can cluck, that is. The bosses themselves are very hit and miss too. Sometimes you get exciting clashes from the likes of Overdrive Ostrich and Morph Moth, but then you get clowns like Wire Sponge and Wheel Gator. Even the ones with great stages like Crystal Snail and Magna Centipede have really annoying battles that practically force you to bring their weakness weapons if you don't want to lose sanity. Get it off me! The X-Hunters are alright, even though their battle theme sounds like Toaster Grime. It is pretty rewarding to fight them early on if it means you can save yourself having to fight Zero near the end of the game. Then again, I'm pretty sure a lot of people prefer that one given how intense the battle is. Oh yeah, forgot to mention that Sigma's behind everything. Again. He's clearly out of shape here though, given how easy it is to predict his attacks. Hell, some of his enemy spawns in the second phase can even heal you. So yeah, clumsy Sig. X2 may not be the perfect sequel, but it did get enough things right to call itself a worthy successor. I'd even say I enjoyed the game more than the first one. It is mostly the Maverick stages and not so much the Fortress parts, but the fact that the game managed to have standout qualities despite its minimal development makes it a pretty worthwhile trip. It's not perfect, but it is my favorite of the original trilogy. Chances are, I'd come back to it for more. Well, okay, I think we're starting to see some signs here. X2 may have tried, but marks of rush development is definitely visible when you factor in how some parts could have been handled much better. But given how the developers still put out something legitimately enjoyable, you can't say that there won't be enough time to at least exert some level of passion into the creation of these sequels regardless of constraints. Which is exactly why nothing can hold me back from ripping to the next game as much as I please. Mega Man X3 exists. It's not a bad game since it's still virtually playable, but saying that it's anywhere as good as its predecessors is giving it a bit much credit. X2 fell victim to a bit of rush production, but it still squeezed out some remarkable stuff. Let's take a look. X and Zero are together again, and now they're out to solve another Maverick outbreak caused by Dr. Doppler, a scientist who used to serve Sigma and is out to make it personal with our heroes. Meanwhile, new and old foes alike return to get their hands on that sweet Maverick hunter hunting. Okay, I'll be fair, the game does have some praisable points. It's functional. You can still play as X and say you're experiencing something familiar as per the previous titles. Adding on, there's still a handful of nice weapons that are fun to use. That is, assuming you can even find enemies to use it on. Yeah, I suppose there's only so far that decent graphics and functional gameplay can take you before you realize there's so little reason to give this game the time and the light. X3 feels lazy, and a lot of that factors into how often you see barren level designs. Not to mention the same enemies recycled over and over again. Rarely do you see a stage-exclusive enemy as part of the area's own identity. Most of them are either copy-paste or reskins pretending to give aesthetic. This makes playing stages like Crush Crawfish, Blast Hornet, and Blizzard Buffalo feel really unfulfilling. Meanwhile, Tunnel Rhino's stage is so long and bloated that stopping the game feels like an option, and even if stages like Neon Tiger and Vault Catfish tried to be complete, it still feels like the bottom end of what X Games could have accomplished. If you're looking for the series' soundtrack at its absolute best, don't look here. X3's music is trying to have a bit more of an underlined punk vibe to it, but so much of it sounds so similar to each other that you quickly forgot they even entered your brain. The best tracks I can think of are Toxic Seahorse, Gravity Beetle, and Zero's theme, and that's only because they tried to do more than just screeching metal. In the previous X games, there's some form of distinct hazard that makes every stage stand out. An open ocean filled with battleships, compartments falling from the sky, magnetized ceilings, and so on and so on. Here, I don't think there's a single stage that really makes the most out of the atmosphere it's given. And it's not like it's hard to do either. Have Crush Crawfish Submarine be flooded with water instead of just turning it upside down. Play around with gravitational platforming in Gravity Beetle stage. Have Blast Hornet shoot you down with a giant satellite. You know, like in the PS1 cinematic? If you got time to put that together, why not execute it here? There is so much missed potential surrounding these levels, and it doesn't even feel like a lack of imagination is a feasible excuse. So, instead of keeping you invested with creative level designs, they had to stick with the bare minimum. How do they attempt to keep your attention then? The answer is higher damage penalty. God damn it, I just got done praising X2 for not regressing any mechanics for the sake of a challenge. And here, they did it! They actually freaking did it! X in this game is about as frail as a bargain bin glass cup. Every enemy and hazard in this game does 2 to 3 times more damage to you compared to previous games, all for the sake of getting that challenge notoriety to make up for the game's lack of creative design. Not only does this make the game frustrating with few eye candies to distract from the pain, but it makes boss fight last less than 10 seconds for every trial and error. How is that fun? No matter how often you lose to a boss, the least that could happen is that you learn from their attack pattern and subjugate it as you progress. Unless you're dealing with a late game boss or a super boss, this kind of damage abuse in place of good design should never be a thing. Even with a higher damage output, the Maverick battles are still piss poor. A lot of them literally just focus on dashing through you from left to right and back. Some of them don't even try to do anything different, while others find new ways to drag you into being rammed by them. It's stupid and it's sad. Even the upgrades are kinda stiff. The dash upgrade is all and good, but the Buster Charge upgrade is so finicky that you wind up dealing less damage most of the time. And the pink capsules? Yeah, what a way to troll you into getting only one at a time when you can just have all of them later. But if playing as X slowly starts to blow, you at least get to play as Zero in this game. This is the first time you get to take the Crimson God of Destruction out for a ride in the series. And how did it go? Half and half. It is fun to do his trademark triple shot with the OP saber intact, but he does feel a bit clunky and not as flexible as in later titles. Still, knowing how bad X gets with his shots, sticking around with Zero doesn't seem like such a bad idea. I guess I'll give the game this. I kinda like the portable right armor. It is fun to see what kinds of armor you can install and what their specialties are, whether it be jumping high, shooting missiles, or so forth. If the rest of the game is much better, the presence of the armors would have meant more, but for what it is, it's a neat idea that's neatly executed. The game concludes fine for what it is. Doppler is a decent boss with a healing gimmick that actually adds strategy to the fight. For a final boss, I guess he gets the job. Psych! It's Sigma again! Back with his many exploitable attack cycles. Yeah, so the game isn't great. And you know what? In the end, it probably doesn't matter since it's still a decent game to play. But still, as a Mega Man X game, it really isn't gonna bring back much of any strong memories. Given how much the series really tries to stand up and reinvent Mega Man, especially with such a powerful start, Having a blunder that's not a result of bad direction, but rather a lack of direction, is still admittedly disappointing. I guess that's better than failing so miserably to the extent of being painful, but some people, including myself, hunger for that poignant gaming experience. Extreme may have gotten passing marks, but it's not the experience I hope to cherish. Wow, didn't think this trilogy will end so sourly. A lot of people say this kind of stuff is inevitable with Rush Productions, but Donkey Kong Country has about the same time frame to push out installments, and there's a lot of effort put into the direction taken with both sequels. So I guess it really is just a burnout on the series' part. I mean, I guess it's more understandable than making a bad game in a sizable time frame, but the rush from those usually comes as a result of having to rebuild assets from the ground up.
Finally, someone gets
And yet, it still has a lot more to show for. How can the series pick up after this if it's slowly lacking the direction to push things further? Well, being produced by Keiji Inafune in his prime is a good start. With the burnout on the 16-bit system, it's only about time we start seeing a rejuvenation of style. Well, fear not, because boot the series up to PS1 and maximize everything you possibly could, and bam! Mega Man X4. This game is amazing. It's colorful, it's intense, it's a lot of fun to play, it's the perfect Mega Man experience. I know I said X1 is nearly flawless, but X4 sure as hell came close to reaching that level of perfection. Okay, I did say almost. Let's get that out of the way first. In this game, you got the pleasure of playing as either X or Zero. X's story is about as straightforward as it gets. He has to fight off the Repliforce while dealing with potential traitors in his ranks, dealing with his faith in the good graces between humans and robots being challenged. Zero's story is more complex as he is in a conflicting relationship with Repliforce and how it harms his love life with Iris. All the while we delve deeper into his origins and how he may or may not be responsible for half the stuff that's been happening throughout the series. Now, to be fair, it is clear based on the development of these cutscenes that they're taking the story of the game a lot more seriously this time. That being said,
This is my fate. I couldn't save anyone after all.
We will build our own nation of Reploid.
Don't you remember? Zero saved my life.
Take heed, we have no other choice.
if this is an opera, it'll certainly evoke tears. Of laughter. Yeah, the voice acting isn't so hot, but you know what? I have a soft spot for bad dubbing if it has salvageable value, and I'd be lying to say what we got here isn't enjoyable to an extent. It just comes with the cost of serious emotional investment. But hell if I care, this is Mega Man we're talking about. We're all in for that sweet acres of action. And to its righteous credit, it delivered every bit. X plays fantastically with an extensive control scheme allowing him to use his buster and special weapons separately, allowing for great combo opportunities and upgrades that make him as spectacularly mobile as ever. Thank God the charge upgrade is actually good this time around. But the real selling point is getting to pick Zero up for a ride across the whole game. For his first outing, he kicked some good ass. He's immediately very mobile even without upgrades. His saber moves swiftly and gracefully as it should, and the weapons he gets from defeating bosses translate to new slicing techniques for him to utilize. Granted, I myself prefer playing the future adaptation of Zero with more weapon options and the ability to peek into some robot gore, but for a first outing, you couldn't have started any better. The presentation is godlike. This is some of the best jump in visuals I've seen in any game series. Masterful pixel art that perfectly captures three-dimensional cell shading, visual effects that explode with elemental intensity, and a collection of sounds and music that... just listen to that! Naturally, with new passions rolling in, new and improved stage designs follow. Everything from standard side-scrolling to puzzle-driven levels to chaser bikes, this game handles all its gimmicks right, while maintaining brilliant aesthetics throughout. The game overall feels so fast-paced that half the time, I don't even notice how often the game makes me stand still to take account of what goes on around me. Any game that can do that is definitely doing something right. And then of course, we got the Maverick roster. By far some of the series' best. Their designs are fantastic, their battles are exciting, regardless of how the difficulty shifts between each other, and their weapons stand out well enough to have their own special use. Magma Dragoon, Split Mushroom, Jet Stingray, Storm Owl, all the Mavericks are amongst the coolest of the cool. Even my least favorites like Cyber Peacock and Frost Walrus still have great design, stage and weapons to compensate for their slightly unsavory battle. Other than that, the Repliforce battles are fine. I just wish that this is what the overall climax of the game builds up to, instead of just Sigma again. To be fair, this Sigma battle isn't bad, it's actually the most balanced Sigma fight we've had in a while. But when your story promises new villains driving the plot and really trying to freshen up character dynamics, throwing Sigma in there just to abide to status quo takes away any impression the Rebel Force could have had as major antagonists. I mean, it's not like you can't save Sigma's connection to Zero for the sequel, since that game is all about him for a change. The one instance the series really tries to care about its story, and it didn't even take it seriously enough to not do this. So yeah, it's not exactly flawless, but at this rate, does it matter? Hell no! The game is still fantastic and nails so much more bullseyes than any of its predecessors ever did. Is it the best game in the series? Adoy! Just like the first two games, you can play this game now and still enjoy it. Doesn't matter if you're jumping, shooting, and slicing robots, there's a lot to enjoy in the complete package that is Mega Man X4. Well, there you go, the first 4 games in the X series neatly tied together. Much like any strong, passionate series, Mega Man X finds its best footing in its early years of life. Even if it trips down in places, it somehow manages to find its way back up so long as it's given to the hands of the right people. But like I said, the early years are where it's at. The road through the next set of streets are the jagged ones you sure gotta tread carefully through. See you all in part 2.